The girl's breath came in whispers, barely lifting her chest. Her skin was pale, lips tinged blue, eyes fluttering weakly. Her father knelt beside her, wiping sweat from her forehead with trembling hands. "Stay with me, please," he whispered, voice cracking. Outside, the sun beat down, cruel and indifferent. He held her hand, cold and limp, as the silence grew heavier. "I called again," he told her softly. "They said it's coming, but it's far." There was no siren, no engine hum, just the sound of his own quiet sobbing. He stood at the edge of the road, scanning the horizon. Nothing but heat waves danced in the distance. The phone in his hand felt useless, a promise never kept. "Where are they?" he muttered, wiping tears with a rough hand. Villagers walked by quietly, unsure what to say. One woman shook her head. "It's too far. They won't make it in time." "Why?" He turned away, shoulders shaking. Back inside, his daughter coughed weakly, each sound a stab to the chest. A man in linen and sunglasses sat on a bench, sipping water. He looked up as a local passed, speaking rapidly in a worried tone. "Child, sick, no ambulance." Hours waiting, he pieced together, his brows furrowed as he stood. "Where?" he asked. The villager pointed toward a clay house at the edge of the field. Without hesitation, the tourist tossed his bag over his shoulder. "Show me," he said firmly. Behind him, his driver already had the car door open. The man entered the hut and froze, his breath caught at the sight. The girl's small chest rose unevenly, her eyes barely open. The father stood, unsure whether to hope or plead. Without a word, the tourist knelt beside her. "She needs a hospital, now," he said urgently. "I tried. I called. They never came," the father choked out. "They won't need to," the man replied. "I'll get her there myself." The driver reappeared with a blanket and water bottle. Hope crept back into the room like sunlight through the doorway. The SUV roared down the dirt road, a cloud of dust trailing behind. Inside, the girl lay across her father's lap, eyelids fluttering. The tourist sat beside them, eyes locked on the GPS, jaw tense. "How much longer?" the father asked desperately. 30 minutes, the driver replied. "Hold on, little one." The sun dipped lower, casting gold across the girl's face. She stirred slightly at the sound of the engine. "Stay with me, sweet girl," her father whispered. It wasn't a siren, but it was the sound of salvation on wheels. The road blurred outside the window, trees whipping past in streaks of green. She lay limply against her father's chest, every breath shallow and slow. The tourist kept checking her pulse, eyes flicking from her face to his watch. The driver didn't speak, but his hands gripped the wheel tightly. "Stay awake," the father whispered, brushing her hair back gently. Her eyelids fluttered once, then again. Each flicker felt like a small victory in a losing battle. The air in the car was heavy with fear and fierce hope. The SUV screeched to a stop under harsh hospital lights. A nurse ran out with a stretcher, calling instructions over her shoulder. The doors flew open. The girl was lifted carefully, her father never letting go of her hand. "Room 204, cardiac response team now," someone yelled. The tourist stood back, watching her disappear down the hallway. He pulled out his phone. Everything. Full coverage. No delay. "Yeah, Tom. No. A nurse turned to him, surprised. "She's not family." "Doesn't matter," he replied. "She matters. That's enough." The hallway buzzed with machines and murmurs behind closed doors. The father paced back and forth, hands clenched, eyes raw. The tourist sat still, eyes fixed on the floor, unmoving. "She has a heart defect," the father said quietly. "We've known since she was 4. She never told me she was hurting. She didn't want me to worry. The tourist listened, head bowed in respect. "You saved her," the father whispered. "Not yet," the man replied. "But we gave her a chance. That's something." Dawn broke without warning, casting soft light through the waiting room. The father slumped in a chair, head against the wall, hand still clutching his daughter's sweater. The tourist dozed beside him, arms crossed, one foot tapping even in sleep. A nurse tiptoed in and paused, moved by the scene. She placed a folded blanket over the father's lap and quietly left. Outside, the city yawned awake, unaware of the battle that had taken place overnight. Inside, silence held its breath, waiting for the next door to open. A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand and a soft smile on his face. "She made it through the night," he said gently. "She's stable now." The father dropped his face into his hands, sobbing, this time with relief. The tourist placed a firm hand on his back, steady and warm. "We'll need surgery soon," the doctor added. "But she has a real shot now." The hallway felt lighter, as if even the walls had been holding their breath. Hope returned, not like a thunderclap, but like sunrise. Slow, golden, undeniable. The silence had finally broken. She blinked slowly, the world around her coming into focus like a dream. The ceiling tiles, the scent of antiseptic, the steady beeping of machines. Her father's hand gripped hers tightly, his eyes swollen but joyful. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." She tried to speak, but the words caught behind the oxygen tube. Instead, she squeezed his hand, weak but firm. The doctor entered quietly. "She's awake. That's a very good sign." The girl turned her head toward the window, where the light touched her feet like a blessing. She sat up slowly, pillows propped behind her like soft armor. A tray of warm soup and fruit rested on her lap. The nurse guided the spoon gently to her lips. "Small bites, sweetheart." Yes. Each swallow felt like a mountain climbed, but she was climbing. Her father watched in awe, like he was witnessing a miracle in motion. "She's stronger than most grown men," the nurse whispered. The girl managed a shy smile, eyes drifting from her father to the nurse. She didn't say much, but her strength spoke louder than words. The sun was soft in the courtyard, filtered through new leaves. She sat in a wheelchair, blanket around her legs, cheeks pink with color. Tourist stood beside her, pointing to a bird resting on the wall. "It's called a hoopoe," he said. "A sign of good luck in some places." She tilted her head, eyes following the bird, then landing back on him. "You brought me luck," she said quietly. He smiled. "I just opened a door. You walked through it yourself." "You?" They stayed there a while, letting the breeze finish the conversation. The playroom smelled like crayons and hand sanitizer. She sat at a small table, a rainbow of colors spread before her. Her drawing showed a heart with wings and a smiling sun above it. She looked up at the nurse. "That's my heart now. It flies better." "Yeah. Please." The nurse laughed softly, eyes shining. "It really does, doesn't it?" A boy nearby asked to borrow red. She handed it over with a proud grin. The pain hadn't vanished, but joy had returned to sit beside it. And in her hands, the world was becoming bright again. Night fell gently, wrapping the hospital in hush and hum. She lay asleep, breathing deep and even, a storybook resting on her chest. The machines beside her blinked slowly, calmly. Her father sat nearby, a cup of tea growing cold in his hand. He didn't speak. He only watched her, memorizing peace. Every rise of her chest was a lullaby. The tourist had left earlier, but not before promising to return for the surgery. The silence in the room was no longer heavy. It was healing. She walked slowly, carefully, one foot in front of the other. The hallway stretched ahead, bright with golden light. Her father walked beside her, not holding her, just walking with her. The nurse clapped quietly. "That's our little champion." Nay. Hold for me, Gimtari. She beamed, still tired, but standing tall in her step. Every movement was a victory, every breath a blessing. Outside, the world waited, not with fear this time, but with open arms. The new house wasn't big, but it was theirs. She sat on the bed reading a picture book, her feet tucked under her. Her father painted the walls slowly, humming to himself. Sunlight poured through the window, touching the room with warmth. "We've never had windows like this," she said with a giggle. "We've never had peace like this either," he replied. Outside, neighbors peeked in, offering fruit and flowers. The house was more than shelter. It was a second chance. Classrooms smelled like chalk and morning rain. She stood at the front, cheeks red, hands clasped. The chalkboard had her name in big letters. "Everyone, please welcome our new student," the teacher said. Children smiled and waved. Genuine, warm, curious. She whispered, "Hi," and found herself smiling back. As she took her seat, her fingers brushed the pencil case in her bag. Learning was no longer a distant dream. It had a desk and her name on it. The square was alive with music and laughter. A banner read, "Thank you for saving our children." Nya. The tourist stood with the father, both shaking hands and exchanging smiles. She stood between them, holding both hands tightly. Villagers came forward, offering letters, drawings, even flowers. "You didn't just save her," one woman said. "You reminded us we matter." The tourist nodded. "She reminded me too." Indeed, hope had arrived, and it had come to stay. The sun dipped low over the hills, painting everything in amber. She walked beside her father, hand in hand, steps steady. Behind them, the hospital stood tall, no longer a place of fear, but of healing. "Will I need to go back?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," he said. "But now we go together. Always." She looked up at him, eyes full of wonder. "Will the sirens come now?" He smiled. "No need. We answered them ourselves." "Yeah, can see. Town." As night fell, their footsteps echoed not in panic, but in peace. And the silence, it was finally full of light.